Once I started living with them, I was left to do all the housework and constantly faced complaints. And I have my own job, but they seem to think it's just for fun. To top it all off, when I told them I was planning to go abroad, "What about housework? What about cleaning the house? If you don't do it, I won't let you go," they said, trying to forcibly make me cancel the overseas trip. Why did it end up like this? My name is Amy. Well, to begin with, the reason why we ended up living with Timothy's family is because it was related to my husband's father, who is also my father-in-law. A few years after I started dating Timothy, we both began to consider marriage. Naturally, we had already intended to marry each other, so it was just a matter of time. However, at that time, Timothy told me about his father. At that time, his father was already hospitalized, and Timothy said it wouldn't be surprising if he passed away any time. So I asked if I could meet him before that, considering that we would eventually get married. Timothy also made time for me despite his busy work schedule, so we could meet his father. Interestingly, I can't deny that I enjoyed listening to my father-in-law's stories. He mentioned that his dream was to interact with people from around the world. But in the end, that dream did not come true, and he ended up where he is now. I felt that it was wonderful that he had lived with a dream in his heart. After that, I started going to my father-in-law on my own sometimes, and we would talk, albeit for 10 minutes or so. At the same time, however, Timothy was concerned that his mother would be alone once he married and left home. So the idea of living together at his parents' house had been brought up before, assuming we got married. According to Timothy, his mother feels young but lonely. But from my perspective back then, I was casually thinking, if they were okay with someone like me, I wouldn't mind living together. I thought my father-in-law was a good person, and I assumed my mother-in-law would be someone easy to get along with. So in a way, it felt like living together had already been decided for me from an early stage. I actually married Timothy and started living together, but life was far from what I had expected. While my mother-in-law greeted me with a smile during the wedding introduction, her attitude completely changed once we began living together. One day, when I woke up in the morning and greeted my mother-in-law, "What do you think the time is, Amy? Who do you think you are, sleeping until this hour?" And just like that, she suddenly got angry with me. Even though it's only 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm actually waking up earlier than my usual self. But my mother-in-law, "Who do you think you are, sleeping later than me, your mother-in-law? You must be out of your mind." She even went so far as to say that. I thought I should be a bit careful, so I asked, "What time do you usually wake up?" She replied that she wakes up at 5 in the morning. Well, it looks like I will have to wake up even earlier than that. But if that's the rule in this family, then I guess I can't do much about it. A wife should wake up earlier than anyone else and prepare breakfast for everyone. Lazy wives have no right to live here. With my mother-in-law saying that much, I tried to adapt to it anyway. I made an effort to wake up early and prepare breakfast, but the challenges of living together didn't end there. My mother-in-law keeps giving me more instructions. "What are you dawdling for? What about cleaning? Cleaning the room and the hallway is a wife's responsibility. It's just common sense. You didn't even know that? And yet you married Timothy." Anyway, my mother-in-law keeps assigning me various tasks, leaving me with hardly any free time. "Get the laundry done in the morning. It needs to be dry by the afternoon. Look at all the weeds in the garden. Don't you notice anything? Why didn't you dry the sheets on such a sunny day? This is ridiculous." I ended up being responsible for all the household chores. Timothy's family home is quite spacious, and it seems like his father worked hard to afford it. However, that also means more cleaning and maintenance work. Living like this, even my own stamina is reaching its limits. I have my own job to do, and I can't spend the whole day on household tasks. My work is mainly done from home, although it's not entirely remote work. I spend a lot of time on my computer at home for work. But from my mother-in-law's perspective, it probably just looks like I'm playing around. Even when I try to talk about my job. What kind of work is just sitting in front of the computer all day? Work means going to a company and working. Are you stupid or something? Timothy is busy every day, and here you are, the wife, living an easy life. In my time, I would have been left high and dry. I can't believe what you've become. Being told that only adds to my frustration. To be clear, my job is not an easy one, but she doesn't listen to me at all. Moreover, despite handling all the household chores up to this point, Amy, I found a single strand of hair in the hallway. Haven't you cleaned? Why is this omelette so bland? Are you dim-witted or something? She scolds me for every little thing. I was getting more and more upset, and even thought of consulting with Timothy. My mother-in-law isn't someone who gets lonely or tries to act young. I can't help but think she's just taking it all out on me. However, when Timothy comes home from work and notices me doing the household chores, that's Amy for you. She's always willing to do anything for me. That's very helpful. And just like that, her attitude changes again. When she says that, I feel like I can't discuss it with Timothy anymore. In the end, the difficult days continue, and I get so tired that I find myself going to bed earlier and earlier. I never imagined my life turning out like this, and I've started to realize that it's taking a toll on both my mental and physical well-being. Amidst all this, difficult times continue, and to top it all, my father-in-law finally passed away. Timothy, of course, and I continue to grieve. I regretted the fact that I used to show up from time to time to talk to my father-in-law, but could not take that kind of time once Timothy and I started living together. The only encouragement I can give myself is that I'm glad I had an opportunity to meet and talk with him before I moved in. However, my feelings remain clouded, and my mother-in-law's hurtful and self-centered remarks continue without stopping. It is so bad that if I don't change now, I may really have to go to the hospital. I was reaching my limit. It was around the time when I was seriously considering talking to Timothy about everything. Then, I received an email from someone related to my work. It was about the possibility of an overseas training opportunity for me. This is a great opportunity for a change of pace. I thought about using this training opportunity as a chance to go on a trip as well. This overseas training takes place several times a year, and it's been a while since I had such an opportunity. So Timothy is aware of this, and
I think it's okay to take some time for yourself occasionally,
he said. So I'm confident that my mother-in-law will understand my situation. After all, it's under the pretext of work, and Timothy himself is often away for several days due to business trips. If she sees it that way, that shouldn't be any issues. But when it came time for me to tell my mother-in-law, I will be going on a work-related overseas trip, so I will be away for about 10 days. When I told her that, my mother-in-law was incredibly angry. Huh? You? Who's always fooling around, going on a training? You've got some nerve, don't you? You're just going on a trip pretending it's a training. Scary, aren't you? Just sitting at home, not earning anything, enjoying an easy life. Using Timothy's salary for an overseas trip. What about the household chores in this house? Aren't you going to clean? Well then, I won't let you go on that trip. The world isn't as easy as you think it is. That's what she said. I had no idea that she didn't believe me this much. And at this moment, my feelings went beyond anger to complete coldness. It was the moment I seriously realized that living with this person is impossible and has reached its limit. The business trip is just 2 days away. And of course, I won't cancel it just because my mother-in-law said those things. So I quietly said one thing. You are right. I understand. Saying that, I started cleaning. In a way I had never done before. I cleaned this spacious house until it was spotless. Not a single hair left behind. The next day, I cleaned the garden according to her preferences. And finally, I prepared all of my mother-in-law's meals for the next 10 days. I also used long-lasting cooking and freezing techniques to make sure everything ended up perfect. Seeing that, my mother-in-law, "So you are starting to understand your role as a wife, huh? Though it's taking you long enough." "Well, I guess it's no surprise given that you don't even have a job and your mind is idle. Instead of talking nonsense about going on a trip abroad, you should be doing this every day." She said it in a sarcastic tone. However, I decided not to react to whatever she said. Even though my mother-in-law might not have noticed, I'm going the overseas trip. That's why I prepared meals for 10 days. When she finishes eating those meals, my mother-in-law will be in for a surprise. While thinking about that, I was doing the household chores and also staying in touch with Timothy during his business trip. Of course, I was also preparing for the trip simultaneously. Then, on the day of the journey, I left the house without saying anything to my mother-in-law. It was at 4 a.m. before she woke up. Come to think of it, those were my mother-in-law's last words. "All you have to do is be a wife and do the chores all the time." I wonder if my mother-in-law will realize that I no longer need to do that. But it might take her about 10 days to figure it out. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed my delightful 10-day overseas trip. As soon as I boarded the plane back to America, my phone started ringing. It was my mother-in-law, and I noticed she had called dozens of times just today from the call history. Normally, I wouldn't want to hear from her after such a fun trip. But now, I was actually curious about her state of mind. So I decided to answer the call on my smartphone, wanting to know how she was doing. Then, from the other end of the phone, I heard my mother-in-law speaking with a single-minded intensity I had never heard before. "So, you finally showed up! Where have you been all this time?" Her first question put me in a dilemma on how to respond. After all, I had properly let her know that before going on the trip, haven't I? I just arrived in America. I'm still at the airport. What's the rush? Why are you so flustered? I calmly conveyed that, but my mother-in-law's voice remained agitated. "Huh? So you really went on a trip overseas? What do you mean? I told you not to go. Neglecting your duties for 10 whole days. You're such a terrible woman." She hurled those words at me. But even though she said that, from my perspective, my explanation was, "Didn't you say all I had to do was take care of the housework and cleaning? I even prepared 10 days worth of meals for you, didn't I? Did you eat all of them?" That's all I have to say. My mother-in-law seems to have enjoyed the meals, so I don't think she has any complaints. But what she really wanted to say wasn't about that. "This house, our home, is going to be sold starting tomorrow? That's why they want me to leave today. And Timothy just got back from a business trip. He took his stuff and went away because he wasn't coming to this house anymore. What have you done to my husband and our family home? You're nothing but a thief." So that's the situation we are in now. My mother-in-law was quite agitated, but I remained calm. I had anticipated that something like this would happen. Since Timothy moved out, he has been ignoring her calls. But I want to make it clear that I'm no thief or anything like that. I've simply acted rightfully. For me, that house is no longer necessary, so I arranged to sell it through a real estate agent before my trip. However, even if I try to explain this to my mother-in-law, "Why are you selling my house? This is ridiculous!" she was just shouting. Honestly, she said I became complacent because I don't work, but I really want to ask her, who's the one being complacent? Why doesn't she understand that someone who isn't even the owner can't just sell another person's house without permission? The house was already mine. Starting with that response, I told my mother-in-law everything about how things unfolded. I talked about my late father-in-law, who was the actual owner of the house, and how he had taken a keen interest in me. His dream was to connect with people from around the world, and my profession perfectly aligned with that. I work as an author, creating books that gather information about diverse cultures, human nature, and the natural world from all around the globe. Of course, I can speak and write in 5 languages fluently, including Spanish. So whenever I heard about unique events happening in certain countries, I would travel overseas to experience them firsthand and gather new material for my upcoming books. My usual work routine involves sitting in front of the computer, meticulously crafting and editing the gathered information about different countries, and then pitching it to international publishing houses. I myself have already earned the trust of publishers around the world for that work, so it is guaranteed to be sold worldwide. Thanks to that, my income far exceeds that of the average office worker. Even Timothy, who works diligently and earns a respective salary, falls short compared to my earnings, which are at least 10 times higher. And my father-in-law had all the American editions of the book I authored. He spoke of me with such respect and admiration. Because of this, my father-in-law said that he wanted me, his daughter-in-law, to take over the house when he passed away. Of course, it felt overwhelming, and I initially declined, but even Timothy.
Indeed. I think he wanted to entrust his final thoughts to someone. He must have wanted to pass on something tangible, something of himself to someone who is fulfilling their own dreams.
With those words, he came to accept that the house would be inherited by me instead of himself. So that's how it became mine after my father-in-law passed away. But before that, I had asked him if it wouldn't be better to leave it to his wife. However, he said,
"That woman never understood anything about my dreams. Even when I suggested traveling abroad together, she rejected everything. What's so exciting about going overseas? Eating delicious food in America is more meaningful. That's all she insisted on. Maybe if I hadn't married that woman, I would have realized my dreams. That's why I don't want to leave this house, the only thing I created, to her."
He shared his true feelings with me. My interpretation was complete when I remembered that the house was merely a means for him to convey his emotions to me. And as long as I understood my father-in-law's feelings, the physical house itself didn't matter anymore. In a way, inheriting the house meant inheriting my father-in-law's emotions. So there's no problem if the house itself, which is no longer needed as a result of this situation, is gone. In fact, I thought it might be better for my father-in-law if we got rid of the house rather than letting my mother-in-law have her way with it. The reason I prepared 10 days worth of meals and left them was because I hoped that my mother-in-law would think of my father-in-law's feelings at least a little in the end. Once I explained everything to her, my mother-in-law must have finally realized the negativity she had shown towards me. Not just towards me, but also towards her own husband, my father-in-law. And if she had understood my job and known my true identity from the beginning, her attitude towards me would have been different. But now that she's finally realized it, it's already too late. Timothy, too, found out when I told him everything.
I can't believe things turned out this way, but it's not hard to see. Mom was always a pushy one, always trying to get her own way. However, I never expected her to show such an attitude towards you, Amy. I'm also filled with anger.
Saying that, he seems to have informed his own mother that he's leaving the house. And now, he must already be living in a new apartment I had contracted. Finally, about my mother-in-law. Hey, please! I have nowhere to go! Please do something! She pleaded desperately, but I no longer have any obligation to do something for my mother-in-law. We don't live together anymore. With just those words, I ended the call. Then, I returned to the new place where Timothy was. After that, my mother-in-law kept calling me multiple times, but I decided to ignore her calls and talk to Timothy instead.
She needs to reflect a bit, or I won't be able to calm down. I will let her taste loneliness for a day and make her pay for it,
he added. I also felt that Timothy might have had some hidden stress in his daily life, but both he and I are not demons or monsters. The next day, I called my mother-in-law, who had to leave the house. Then, she answered the phone with a weak and tearful voice, just like a child. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I will find a way somehow. She just kept repeating apologies over and over again. She must have hit rock bottom emotionally. Feeling her remorse, we provided my mother-in-law with a rather old and small, but significantly cheaper apartment. You can live there. However, you will have to work and pay the rent from then on. We made it clear that if she couldn't pay and get evicted, we won't be involved anymore. If you're experienced as a wife, you understand, right? I manage the household chores diligently. And nowadays, many women work as well. I hope you also experience what it's like to balance work and life. Even someone like me can do it. So it should be a piece of cake for you, Mom. With a hint of sarcasm in my last remark, I concluded the conversation. Apparently, she has managed to get a part-time job doing miscellaneous work, and is just barely making ends meet. And we were back to life as usual again. We were both busy with our work, and spend our evenings having dinner together and resting. One significant change is that we are now living together as a couple, experiencing a true newlywed life, I suppose. And although it's still a few months away, I received another offer for an overseas business trip. When Timothy heard about it, he said,
If I can get time off, I'd like to go too.
It seems like he might be able to take a substantial break, which means we might be able to turn the business trip into our honeymoon trip.